She was just a poor girl, quiet, invisible, and chosen to sing at the school talent show. As a cruel joke. But when a single dad saw the fear in her eyes and offered her a place to be heard, what followed was a performance that left the entire room stunned, and a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Because sometimes the voice the world tries to silence becomes the one it remembers the most. If stories of quiet courage, unexpected kindness, and everyday miracles speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey where music heals, love grows, and even the softest voice can echo forever. Now let's begin. Single. Dad helped. Poor girl. Asked to sing at school as a joke. Her voice left the room stunned. The wind howled low through the chain-link fences of Haddonfield Middle School as the last bell rang. Students poured out like water from a tipped-over bucket, laughing, shouting, slamming lockers. It was the kind of chaotic joy that often camouflaged the cruelty lurking just beneath. Lily Carson, 13, kept her head low as she slipped her worn backpack onto her shoulder. Her shoes were secondhand, the soles uneven. Her jacket smelled faintly of mothballs. She walked with the air of someone who had long grown used to not being seen, or worse, being seen too clearly. She was nearly out the back gate when she heard her name. Lily, a boy's voice sang with cruel sweetness. Where you going, superstar? Her feet froze. She didn't turn. Maybe if she didn't react. Hey, aren't you gonna practice your big solo? Another boy chimed in, laughter in his throat. She turned slowly. A small group of 8th graders, 4 boys and 1 girl, stood by the bleachers. They weren't from her homeroom, but they knew her story well enough. The new girl, the quiet one, the one who sang to herself when she thought no one was listening. Except someone had been listening. And recording. You're on the talent show list, said the girl with a smirk, waving a printed sheet. Didn't you hear you're the star this year? Lily's mouth went dry. She hadn't signed up for anything. You didn't, the girl continued, faux innocence dripping like syrup. Oh no, someone must have signed you up by accident. Or maybe, as a gift. The boys burst into laughter. Lily turned to leave, but before she could move, one of them stepped in front of her. Come on, he said. Give us a preview. Sing something. I don't want to, Lily whispered. Aw, he mocked. She's shy. Then without warning, he snatched the earbuds from her jacket pocket and tossed them to the ground. Another boy shoved her shoulder lightly. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Not yet. She looked around. There was no one. Teachers were gone. The back lot was deserted. Her heart pounded. Sing, the girl ordered, pulling out her phone to record. Please. Lily's voice cracked. Sing, or we'll make you. And that was when Dean Cooper's old pickup truck rolled around the corner. From his front seat, Dean noticed the huddle immediately. At first it looked like a group of kids hanging out until he saw Lily's posture rigid, like a deer cornered by wolves. He slammed the truck door shut and crossed the field without a word. As he approached the boy in front of, Lily gave her a light push again. Sing, freak. Hey. Dean's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a cold wind. The group turned, startled. His figure, a tall man in his early 40s, in flannel and work boots, face weathered, but steady, cast a long shadow across the concrete. Leave her alone, he said. One of the boys laughed nervously. We were just joking, mister. Dean walked up and stood beside Lily, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. She flinched, but then looked up into his eyes. They were calm. Safe. I have it on video, he said, raising his phone. And I know your names. The boy's smile vanished. You want me to send this to your parents, or maybe the principal? Better yet, we can go straight to the police. You choose. They scattered like startled birds. Only the girl hesitated, her face pale. She looked at Lily for half a second, not with regret, but something more vulnerable. Then she turned and ran after the others. Lily stood frozen. Dean knelt slowly and picked up her cracked earbuds. He looked at them a moment before handing them back. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, then shook her head. Then nodded again. "Come on," he said. "Let me give you a ride." The silence in the truck was thick, but not heavy. Dean didn't force conversation. He just drove. Lily stared at the floor mats. Then, as the truck turned onto an older road, she finally spoke. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Dean replied. She turned to him. "Why did you help me?" He thought about it. About the daughter he once had, the one who used to hum songs into the quiet spaces of the house, the one he couldn't protect. He didn't say all that. Instead, he answered, "Because someone should have." Lily looked out the window. Her fingers gripped the sleeves of her jacket. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But something inside her began to shift. Dean pulled into his driveway, an old farmhouse with peeling paint, but a warm porch light. The garage door was open, revealing a dusty, upright piano, its top cluttered with old sheet music and coffee mugs with chipped handles. Lily stepped out of the truck, unsure. Dean gestured to the garage. "You ever sing with a piano?" She shook her head. "Want to?" She hesitated, then nodded, just barely. Dean led her in. The air smelled like cedar and old stories. He sat at the piano and played a single chord, low, gentle full. And for the first time in her life, Lily sang not because she was told to, but because someone had made space for her voice to be heard. The first note that Lily sang in Dean's garage hung in the air like dust in a shaft of sunlight, fragile, suspended, unsure if it belonged. Dean let it settle before playing another chord beneath it, gently guiding her back into the melody. She flinched at first, unsure how much of herself to give. But something about the sound of that piano, weathered but true, urged her forward. Her voice was raw, not polished, but there was a texture in it, the kind of texture that made people stop stirring their coffee or flipping pages. It was the kind of voice that carried things too heavy to speak. Dean didn't interrupt. He let her finish, though she stumbled at the end and stopped abruptly, pressing her lips together like she'd made some terrible mistake. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I messed it up." Dean looked at her from the piano bench and shook his head. "You didn't mess anything up." That was the most honest sound I've heard in 10 years. She blinked as if unsure whether to believe him. He stood and walked over to a shelf in the corner. Among the cluttered tools and old paint cans, he pulled out a thermos and poured hot chocolate into a chipped mug. He handed it to her. "Sit. Warm up. It gets cold in here." She took the mug with both hands. It was heavier than she expected. "You play like it's telling a story," she said almost to herself. Dean smiled faintly. "That's how my wife used to say it. She was the real musician. I just banged on keys and tried not to ruin the feeling." Lily's eyes widened. "You had a wife, I did." He paused. "She passed away. Years ago. I'm sorry." He nodded in appreciation. "And a daughter. Her name was Rachel. She was a lot like you." Lily looked up, not just because of the voice, Dean added, but the way she looked at the world, like it had both disappointed her and dared her to keep going anyway. There was silence again, but it was softer now, like the quiet that followed a prayer. Dean sat back at the piano and tapped the wood gently. "You want to try something?" She hesitated. "Like what I'll play. You just hum. No words. Just let whatever you're feeling ride on the sound." Lily's eyes darted toward the open garage door, as if someone might be listening. "No one's out there," he said gently. This is safe." and slowly she nodded. Dean played a progression in C major, gentle, warm, almost maternal in tone. Lily closed her eyes, and she hummed. Her voice floated through the garage, uncertain at first, then steadier. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't even practice. It was a moment, a release. Dean played softer, giving her room. And for the first time since Rachel died, he felt like music wasn't just something he used to do. It was something he could still be part of. After the song faded, Lily set her mug down and asked, "Why are you helping me?" Dean didn't answer right away. He looked toward the corner of the garage, where an old photo hung faded by time. A girl in a choir dress, her arm around a beaming woman with auburn hair. "I couldn't help the person I loved most when she needed it," he finally said. "So maybe now I help who I can. That's how I stay human." Lily didn't say anything, but she looked at him differently after that, as if he had finally passed some invisible test she didn't know she'd given. The next day, Dean pulled up to Lily's house to pick her up. Her grandmother answered the door, a frail woman with white hair, tucked in a tight bun, and eyes that had once been full of fire, now dimmed by years of worry. "I hear you've been helping her sing," she said, her voice gravelly. Dean nodded, just giving her a space to be herself. "She doesn't get much of that," the woman said, looking at her hands. Her mother left. Her father wasn't kind. "I understand." She looked up at him sharply. "No, I don't think you do. But maybe you will." Before he could respond, Lily appeared at the door, her hair pulled back, and a composition notebook hugged tight against her chest. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded. They drove in silence for most of the way. Then Lily asked, "What kind of music do you like?" Dean raised an eyebrow. "I'm a sucker for sad songs, like country, old country. Back when it wasn't just beer and pickup trucks. When it was stories." Lily smiled. "I like stories, I can tell." Back in the garage, Lily pulled out the notebook. She opened to a page and showed it to Dean. It was lyrics, not polished, not even rhymed, but honest. So heartbreakingly honest that Dean had to blink twice before responding. "You wrote this?" She nodded. "It's not bad," he said. She frowned. "It's beautiful," he added. "But I don't want your head to get too big." She laughed, really laughed, for the first time. That night, Dean couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark with his old tape recorder playing back the humming he'd captured earlier. He didn't know what would come of this. He didn't even know what he was doing. But he knew one thing. That girl had a voice the world needed to hear. And this time, he would not fail to protect it. For the first time in a long while, Lily didn't dread waking up. There was still the usual heaviness in her chest, that hollow, aching sort of weight that never quite went away. But today, something else stirred, too. Something quieter and warmer, like a match just struck in the dark. She pressed a hand over her heart, almost surprised to find it still beating with that soft thrum of possibility. Outside, the morning sun crept in through her grandmother's lace curtains. Dust motes danced in the air. The little house smelled of weak coffee and lavender floor polish. In the kitchen, her grandmother stood by the stove, staring out the window, with a blankness that had become her default expression. Her gnarled hands clutched the edge of the counter, as if holding herself upright required conscious effort. "You're up early," she said, not turning around. Lily nodded. I'm going back to Dean's. He said I could work on a song today." Her grandmother finally turned. Her voice was low. "That man. You trust him?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. "He listens, not like other people." There was a long pause before her grandmother replied. "That's rare. Don't waste it." Dean's garage looked different now, not because it had changed physically, but because Lily was beginning to see it differently. It no longer felt like a forgotten room attached to a tired old house. It felt like a place where things might begin. The walls were lined with shelves filled with odds and ends, jars of screws, scraps of wood, dusty mugs with faded logos. But near the upright piano, Dean had cleared a space just for her, a metal stool with a knitted cushion, a music stand, and a notebook with her name written in clean block letters on the front. She didn't remember giving him her name. "You've got a songwriting corner now," Dean said, setting down a mug of cocoa. "Every artist needs a sacred spot." Lily smiled shyly. "You really think I'm an artist? I think you're something he said sitting on the piano bench, and I'd rather help you figure out what that is than try to label it too early." She sat down, opened her notebook, and looked at the scribbled lyrics from the night before. Her handwriting was messy, uneven, but the words, they carried something truer than she could say out loud. Dean tapped the keys, gently warming up the old piano. It had a slightly sour middle G and a faint rattle in the lower octaves, but its imperfections gave it character, like an old voice that had lived too long to pretend anymore. "Want to sing it through?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "Not yet." He nodded. "Then hum it. Let's find the shape first." She closed her eyes, drew in a slow breath, and began. Hours passed. They worked line by line, note by note, finding where her voice felt strong and where it wavered. Dean never rushed her. He never raised his voice, or gave her the look most teachers did when she didn't get it right on the first try. When her pitch slipped, he gently guided her back, not with correction, but with demonstration. He'd play it again, slightly slower, coaxing the note out of the silence, like someone calling a lost bird home. Sometimes he didn't even speak. He just watched her, and she understood. That was the part she found hardest to explain to anyone else Dean didn't just teach. He listened with his whole body. Around midday, Dean suggested a break. They sat on the back steps of the house with sandwiches he'd made peanut butter and jelly for her egg salad for him. "Why music?" she asked, chewing slowly. Dean took a long sip of iced tea before answering. "Because when words fall short, sound still reaches." "Did you always love it?" He nodded. "Since I was a kid. My mom played banjo in a bluegrass band. I learned piano by ear in the church basement." "Why did you stop?" Dean's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't look away. "When Rachel died, I couldn't bring myself to play anymore. Every note felt like her voice, calling from a place I couldn't reach." Lily didn't say anything. She just looked down at her shoes, one lace frayed, the other double-knotted. "I used to think if I never played again, the pain would go away," Dean continued. "But grief's funny. It doesn't leave when you go silent. It grows, fills the spaces you abandon." Lily looked up at him. "And now I think maybe music was never supposed to be quiet. Maybe it's supposed to carry the ones we've lost." Later that day, Lily sang the full first verse of her song without stopping. It wasn't perfect. Her voice cracked on one word, and she forgot a line halfway through and had to hum until it came back. But when she finished, Dean stood up, walked over, and knelt in front of her. "Lily," he said gently, "that was brave." She looked startled. "It was..." "Yes," he said. Voice steady, not because it was flawless, but because it was real. That's the kind of singing people don't forget. Her cheeks flushed. Her eyes shimmered with something between disbelief and hope. And then she asked, "Can I come back tomorrow?" Dean smiled. "You can come back every day." That evening, after Lily had gone home, Dean sat in the garage alone, recording her voice onto a cassette using an old tape deck. The hiss in the background made it sound like it had come from another time. He labeled it simply, "Lily." Day 3. Then he slid the tape into a small wooden box right beside another older tape labeled, "Rachel. Last song." He closed the lid not with sorrow, but with something that felt almost for the first time in years like peace. By the end of that week, the garage didn't just smell like oil and cedar anymore. It smelled faintly of cocoa-worn wood and possibility. Lily arrived every afternoon like clockwork. She no longer needed Dean to walk her to the garage. She knew her way in, dropped her backpack at the same spot, and began humming almost before she sat down. Her voice, once hesitant, now carried a thread of confidence, woven with something older than her years, something aching and beautiful. Dean noticed the shift. It was in the way she tapped her foot lightly when the rhythm moved her, the way she started correcting her own phrasing, the way she dared to linger longer on the final note of a line, as if claiming her space. She was still quiet, still guarded, but in the music, she came alive. That Friday, Dean arrived early and cleared a shelf in the corner of the garage. He dusted it off and placed a few things there: a small lamp, a metronome, and a jar filled with sharpened pencils. Then he hung a corkboard with pushpins and blank index cards. He didn't explain it. He just nodded toward it when Lily came in. "What's that?" she asked. "Your wall?" Dean said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You write lyrics, right? Melodies. Now you've got a place to put them. This garage isn't mine anymore. It's ours." Lily blinked. Something in her chest shifted soft, sudden and warm. "Ours," she repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. She stepped closer to the wall. Carefully, reverently, she pinned up a wrinkled index card from her notebook. It read, "I thought I was a whisper, but maybe I'm a song." Dean read it once, then twice. "That's good." She smiled, embarrassed. "Too simple." "No," he said. "Simple's honest, and honest bots." Over the next few days, the corkboard began to bloom. Snippets of melody, half-finished lyrics, one-liners like "My heart's not broken," just learning to echo. Lily would read them aloud while Dean played, trying out different tempos and keys. Sometimes she scratched them out. Sometimes she rewrote them. But every word on that board belonged to her. And Dean never touched a single one. One afternoon, Lily arrived with a brown paper bag in her arms and a nervous look on her face. "I brought something," she said, placing the bag gently on the piano. Dean looked inside. It was a notebook, old and faded. Inside were pages of songs, some finished, some not. The handwriting shifted from neat to shaky, like someone growing through the years. "These were my mom's," Lily said. "She wrote them before she left." Dean closed the book gently. She was a songwriter, wanted to be, said she was going to go to Nashville someday. But she got stuck with my dad. And then, with other things. Lily didn't need to say more. Dean could read the rest in her eyes. "She used to sing to me," Lily continued, "when I was little. I remember one song. It was about the rain. Said it wasn't the sky crying, but the sky remembering." Dean nodded slowly. "That sounds like a woman who understood things." "She left the notebook behind," Lily said, softer now. "I don't know if that was an accident or a message." Dean placed the notebook gently next to the piano and said, "Then let's finish one of her songs." Lily looked up, startled. "Really?" "Yeah," Dean said. "Sometimes the best way to heal isn't to write a new song, it's to complete the one someone else had to stop." They chose a piece called "Hollow Sound." It had a haunting melody and unfinished chorus. Lily read through it twice, then began to hum softly. Dean adjusted the chords. "Let's try it in a minor." For the next 2 hours, they worked on nothing else. Dean at the piano, Lily leaning over the keys, her voice quiet but insistent. And in the pauses between lines, Dean began to see it more clearly, not just the music, but the girl beside him. She was a storm contained in a teacup, fragile but full of power. waiting for someone to believe she wouldn't shatter. When the song was finally pieced together, Lily asked, "Will you play it with me?" At the show, Dean looked at her. "You want me on stage?" She nodded. "It was never just my voice. It was always both of us." Dean hesitated. The thought of returning to a public stage stirred something ancient and painful inside him. The last time he'd performed had been at Rachel's school 1 month before she passed. Music back then had turned from balm to blade. He hadn't touched it in public since, but now looking at Lily, he saw a different kind of moment. This wasn't performance. This was restoration. He exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "I'll play." That night after Lily left, Dean sat alone in the garage. He looked at the corkboard, the lyrics, the lamp, the notebook of a mother who had tried but couldn't stay. Then he looked at the upright piano, its keys slightly yellowed, middle G still sharp, and realized something. This place, once filled with silence, was now echoing with beginnings. He reached into the wooden box again, pulled out Rachel's final tape, and played it. Her voice, faint, imperfect. Young filled the room. Then he played Lily's most recent recording right after. 2 voices years apart, one unfinished, the other just beginning. And in that fragile transition, Dean felt something rare. Peace. And maybe even purpose. The first frost of the season came quietly, leaving a fine lace of silver on Dean's porch steps. The world looked cleaner in the cold, crisp, outlined like sheet music before the melody. Dean stood in the garage, cup of coffee in one hand, listening to the last few seconds of a cassette he'd recorded the day before. Lily's voice trailed off into a soft hum, unfinished, but not uncertain. It was only 7 in the morning, and already he knew the tape would go into the box. The box wasn't ornate, just a plain hand-sanded cedar rectangle the size of a shoebox. He'd made it with his daughter Rachel one weekend years ago when she was 10 and fascinated with woodworking. Back then, it had been for keepsakes, concert programs, friendship bracelets, guitar picks. After she died, it became a tomb of sound. Dean had filled it with recordings of her voice, her laughter, a few stray chords she'd once played, before slamming the piano lid shut and storming out of the room in frustration. And now, for reasons he hadn't dared explore too deeply, he had begun placing Lily's tapes beside Rachel's. He didn't tell her. Not yet. When Lily arrived that afternoon, she was quieter than usual. She walked in with her shoulders, hunched, eyes low. Dean could tell immediately something had shifted. He didn't ask. Not at first. Instead, he nodded toward the piano. "Ready." Lily sat down, opened her notebook, and stared at a half-written verse. Dean waited. And waited. Finally, she spoke. "My grandmother forgot my name this morning." The words dropped into the silence like a stone into a still pond. Dean put down his mug. "She was making oatmeal," Lily continued. "And she asked me how I like mine. But she didn't call me Lily. She said, 'Young lady.'" Her voice broke slightly on the last syllable. Dean didn't respond right away. He simply moved his chair beside hers. "She looked so scared," Lily whispered. "Like she knew something was wrong, but couldn't name it." "She's been forgetting a few things lately, hasn't she?" Dean asked gently. Lily nodded. He paused, then said, "You want to talk about it? Or play through it?" Lily wiped her eyes with her sleeve and looked at the piano. Play through it. So he did. They didn't work on the song they'd planned. Instead, Dean played something else, an old instrumental he'd written years ago. It was slow and warm, the kind of melody that made you think of rain on porch roofs and coffee cooling in chipped mugs. Lily didn't sing. She didn't hum. She just listened. When the piece ended, she asked, "Do you ever forget her voice?" Dean blinked. "I try not to," he said. That's why I started recording. Not for music. For memory. He stood, walked to the wooden shelf and pulled down the box. Lily hadn't seen it before. He placed it between them. "This is where I keep the things that matter most," he said. He opened the lid. Inside were tapes labeled with dates and song titles. Some had names: Rachel's Waltz, Winter Rehearsal After the Storm. The handwriting was neat, careful. Lily reached in and picked up one tape with trembling fingers. She sang too. She did. Not all the time, but when she did, the whole house listened. Lily put the tape down like it was made of glass. Dean reached beside him and picked up the most recent recording. "This one's yours," he said. Her eyes widened. "I record your sessions too," he explained. "I didn't want to tell you at first. I wanted to keep it pure. But now you should know your voice belongs here. With hers." Lily looked down at the box. "But she was your daughter." Dean looked straight at her. "And you're someone I refuse to lose." The words hit her harder than expected. She looked away, but it was too late. Her chin trembled, her nose reddened, and the tears came fast. Dean didn't reach out. He just let her cry. Some grief has to be exhaled before it can be shared. Later that evening, when the garage grew colder and the sun dipped low behind the trees, Lily placed her first tape into the box herself. She slid it in next to Rachel's, not instead of, alongside. That distinction meant everything. On her way out, Lily paused at the door. "Dean." "Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a place that saved things for me before." He smiled softly. "Well, now you do." That night, after Lily was gone and the garage was dark again, Dean pulled out an old sheet of music tucked into the back of the box, a melody Rachel had started but never finished. It had no lyrics, just a chorus with soaring chords that always sounded like they wanted to go somewhere but didn't know how. Dean sat at the piano and began to play it. Then, with trembling hands, he started writing a bridge. Not for Rachel, not for Lily, but for both of them. For the space in between. For the echo that ties what was lost to what might still be found. The day the list went up, Lily didn't want to look. It was posted on the glass outside the school auditorium, typed in bold capital letters. Winter Talent Show Final Lineup. A cluster of students huddled around it, some with excitement, some with dread, and a few with cruel delight. Lily hung back, clutching her backpack strap, feeling the familiar swirl of anxiety knotting her stomach. She didn't have to get close to see her name. Slot 9. Lily Carson Hollow Sound. Original Song. Her throat went dry. She hadn't signed up. Dean had submitted the form after she agreed quietly without fanfare. She remembered nodding, heart pounding, when he asked, "You want to do this for real?" It hadn't felt real until now. That afternoon in the garage, Lily stared at the sheet music in her lap. She hadn't said much since arriving. Dean noticed. "Bad day, I'm on the list." He looked up from the piano, surprised. That was fast. People were talking. Dean rested his hands on the keys. "What kind of talking?" Lily hesitated. "Some think it's a joke. Others think I'm going to embarrass myself." Dean didn't respond right away. He just played a soft minor chord, let it linger. "Let them," he said at last. "Then show them they were wrong." Lily looked at him unsure. What if they're not? He met her gaze. "You're not singing for them. You're singing for the part of you that thought it never had a voice." That silenced her, but not in the way fear does, in the way truth does. The next morning, Dean got a phone call. It was Principal Harmon. "Mr. Cooper," she began, her voice clipped. "I understand you've been working with one of our students outside of school hours, Lily Carson." "Yes," Dean said. "I've been helping her with music." There was a pause. Then came the words he didn't expect. There's been concern from faculty and a few parents. They don't believe Lily is emotionally ready for a public performance. Dean's grip tightened on the phone. She's more ready than most adults I know. I'm sure your heart is in the right place, the principal continued, but the school has a responsibility to protect students from unnecessary stress. Given her background, we feel it may be best if she withdraws. Dean's voice dropped. Did Lily ask to be removed? No, the principal admitted, but then she stays. There was another pause. I'd like to meet with you, the principal said. Face to face. Dean hung up without agreeing. That evening he told Lily what had happened. He expected tears, or maybe panic, but she was quiet. Still. They want me off the list, she asked. Yes. She looked at the floor, then at the wall of index cards, then at the wooden box. Finally, she said, I want to go talk to them. Dean blinked. You don't have to. I can handle it. She shook her head. No. If they're going to doubt me, they should at least hear me say I'm not afraid. He studied her face. She wasn't posturing. She wasn't pretending to be brave. She was simply done running. And he saw Rachel in her, not in appearance but in resolve. All right, he said. Then we do this your way. The next day, Lily walked into the front office of the school in her favorite denim jacket, scuffed boots, and a heart beating so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Dean sat beside her, silent but solid. When the principal greeted them, she did so with a tight smile. Lily, she began. We're not here to discourage you. We're here to, Lily cut in her voice, soft but firm. Do you think I'll fail? The principal blinked. Excuse me, is that why you want me off the list? Because you think I'll fall apart in front of everyone? Principal Harmon hesitated. We're concerned about the pressure this may put on you, that's all. Lily nodded slowly, then pulled a folded paper from her backpack. She handed it to the principal. These are the lyrics to my song. I wrote them. With help. Every word means something. The principal unfolded the page, skimmed it. Do you see anything unstable there? Lily asked. The principal didn't answer. I'm not asking to win anything, Lily continued. I'm asking for the chance to speak. Dean watched her pride swelling in his chest. I've been silent long enough, Lily said. Let me be heard. There was a long silence. Then the principal folded the paper again and placed it on the desk. We'll keep you on the list. Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Dean stood and nodded once. Good choice. That night, Lily didn't want to practice. Instead, she pulled down every card from the corkboard and laid them out on the floor, each lyric, each thought, each line of melody. Dean watched from the doorway, letting her work through the ritual. I'm scared, she said suddenly. I'd be worried if you weren't. She looked up. You think I'll forget everything I think, he said, walking over that when it matters most, you'll remember everything that counts. Then he picked up one card, the first she'd ever written. I thought I was a whisper. But maybe I'm a song. He handed it to her. Start there. The night before the show, the town of Haddonfield fell under a rare hush. The trees outside Dean's house stood still, their bare limbs outlined against a silver sky. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Inside the garage, a light glowed softly behind the windows, warm and steady. It was past 9, but neither Dean nor Lily felt like stopping. Not yet. They had played the song a dozen times that day, each take a little sharper, a little more certain. Lily's voice had settled into the melody, like a hand into a well-worn glove, tentative at first, but now sure of its shape. Her breathing was deeper, her phrasing more honest. She no longer sang to get through the notes. She sang to say something. Dean leaned back from the piano, cracking his knuckles. I think we've got it. Lily nodded, flipping her notebook closed. Still feels like it's missing something. He raised an eyebrow. We're 12 hours out. You want to rewrite the bridge now? No, she said. Not that. Just, I don't know. Something about it still feels like it's not finished. Dean leaned forward. Because it isn't. Lily tilted her head. I never told you Dean began, but the melody for this song, Hollow Sound, it came from Rachel. Lily's eyes widened. She wrote the first part, just the first verse. Then she stopped. Said she didn't know how to end it. Said maybe it wasn't meant to be finished. Lily glanced down at the sheet music. You never told me that. I wasn't ready, Dean admitted. But watching you bring it to life, I think maybe it was never meant to be her song alone. Lily was silent for a moment. Then she whispered, You think she'd be okay with me finishing it? Dean looked at her with a softness he rarely let show. I think she'd be proud that someone finally did. They spent the next hour refining the final chorus, adding just a few words. Small changes, but ones that mattered. Where the melody had once faded out in hesitation, it now lifted, rising with quiet conviction. By the end, Lily was nearly whispering the last line, but it carried more power than any note she'd ever sung. I am not the silence they left behind. I am the song they never finished. When she sang it, Dean turned away for a moment, pretended to tune a key that didn't need tuning. It was the first time he'd heard Rachel's melody resolve. Later, as they packed up, Dean handed Lily a black velvet pouch. She looked at it puzzled. What's this? Open it. Inside was a silver pendant, small, circular, worn but polished. On the front, a treble clef. On the back, an engraving. Still singing, it was Rachel's, Dean said. She used to wear it before every recital. She said it reminded her that no matter what went wrong, the song always had another note. Lily looked down at it in her palm. I can't, she began. Yes, Dean said firmly. You can. And you will. She didn't argue. She just nodded and tucked it safely into the small pocket of her denim jacket. The next morning, the school auditorium hummed with nervous energy. Students flitted back and forth behind the curtain, some rehearsing under their breath, others pacing in silence. A few had clearly dressed for showmanship. Sequins, gelled hair, awkward bow ties. Lily stood near the piano, her hands clenched at her sides. Her denim jacket, now adorned with Rachel's pendant, felt like armor. Dean knelt beside her, tuning the school's grand piano with a calm he didn't quite feel. You okay? He asked. She nodded, but her eyes were wide. My stomach feels like it's on a roller coaster. That's how you know it matters. What if I forget the words? You won't. What if I trip walking out? Dean smiled. Then you make it part of the show. Lily exhaled, shaky but determined. When her name was called, the crowd was still abuzz. Parents checking phones, students whispering, teachers whispering louder. But when Dean stepped out and sat at the piano, when Lily took her place beside him, one hand touching the microphone stand, the room began to hush. Dean gave her a single nod, and she nodded back. Then he played the opening chord. It started soft, a slow climb. Lily's voice came in gently, barely more than breath, but there was clarity in it, something unshakable. Each word unfurled like a ribbon of light. I used to think I was a shadow in a hallway full of sun. No one moved, no one whispered. Even the students who had once teased her were still silent, eyes fixed. Dean played beneath her, anchoring her flight, weaving Rachel's memory into every chord. The song rose in slow, swelling arcs. When the bridge came, Lily looked out past the lights, past the crowd, and sang like she wasn't afraid anymore. I'm not the silence they left behind. I am the song they never finished. And when the final note faded, the room didn't erupt. It stayed still, frozen in reverence. Then slowly someone stood, an old man near the aisle, a teacher next. Then, all at once, the room rose, not with noise, not with clapping that drowned the moment, but with something deeper, a collective standing ovation born not from performance, but from being witnessed. Backstage, Lily collapsed into Dean's arms. He held her gently. She was trembling, but smiling. "I didn't forget," she whispered. "I knew you wouldn't." That night, back in the garage, Lily placed the new recording captured live from the show into the wooden box. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Dean closed the lid. For the first time in years, there was no weight to the silence that followed. Only peace. And promise. The morning after the show, the town woke up slower than usual. Snow had fallen overnight, just a dusting, but it softened everything. The sidewalks, the roofs, even the sharp corners of the world. Haddonfield, wrapped in white, looked like it was exhaling. Dean stood at the window, with a mug of black coffee, watching flakes drift down through the branches of the old oak tree. He hadn't slept much, but not from worry. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Across the room, the wooden box sat quietly on the shelf. Inside, among the tapes and lyrics and fragments of lives stitched together by melody, lay the newest edition, Lily, Live Talent Show. He hadn't listened to it yet. He didn't need to. He had been there. He had felt it not just as music, but as a kind of benediction. A final note on a song that had been echoing incomplete inside him for years. And now, there was space. Lily came by in the afternoon, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her boots leaving small, wet prints on the garage floor. She didn't say much, just handed Dean a folded envelope. He raised an eyebrow. "Fan mail." She shrugged. They passed these out after the show. People could write notes if they wanted. He opened the envelope and pulled out a single card. It was handwritten in careful script. "I haven't cried during a school event since my son's graduation 15 years ago. You reminded me why we need to keep listening to young voices. Thank you for your courage. Mrs. Danner, 7th grade math." Dean looked up. Lily was watching him carefully, like she was waiting for permission to believe it. He handed it back. "You earned every word." She smiled then. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough to warm the room. Later that day, as the sun began to set and the snow turned to slush on the roads, there was a knock on the door. Dean opened it to find Emily, her auburn hair tucked under a knit hat, her cheeks pink from the wind. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said. "You're never intruding," Dean replied, stepping aside. She came in brushing snow from her coat sleeves. "I wanted to thank you. For last night. For all of it." Dean nodded, then gestured toward the kitchen. Coffee always. They sat at the small table beside the window, steam rising from their mugs. For a while they didn't speak. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It was full. Comfortable. "I watched her during the performance," Emily said finally. "But I couldn't keep my eyes off you either." Dean blinked. "Me, you looked like a man coming home." He swallowed hard. "Maybe I was." They sat with that for a moment. "I knew Rachel," Emily said softly. "I was a grad student then, interning in school counseling. I wasn't much help. I've thought about her often." Dean looked down. "You were kind to her. That's more than I can say for some. I wasn't kind enough." There was a pause. Then Emily asked, "Do you believe people get second chances? Not in life. In love." Dean looked at her. Her face was gentle, her eyes clear. "I think love doesn't come with chances. It comes with moments. And you either recognize them, or you don't." Emily reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slip of folded paper. She slid it across the table. It was a newspaper clipping, small, from the Haddonfield Gazette. "Student's original song brings down the house at Winter Talent Show." There was a grainy photo Lily standing beside the piano, Dean sitting just behind her. "I cut it out this morning," Emily said. "I thought you should keep it." Dean didn't answer. He just looked at it, then at her. She smiled a little shy. "Besides, it's the first time you've smiled in a photo since I've known you." He chuckled low and honest. They sat in silence again. But this time, there was something new in it. Something open. As she stood to leave, Emily paused at the door. "You know," she said, "I never understood what healing looked like. Until I saw you two on that stage." Dean looked at her. "Healing doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like two people playing a song they didn't write alone." She nodded, eyes shining. "Dean," she added, voice quiet, "if you ever feel like writing a new one, just say the word." He didn't need to ask what she meant, and he didn't rush his reply. Instead, he walked over to the piano, pressed a single key middle C, and let it ring. Then he turned to her and smiled. "Let's not rush the chorus," he said. "But I think I've got the melody." That night, alone again in the garage, Dean sat at the piano and replayed the final verse of Hollow Sound. He didn't sing, but he mouthed the words. "I'm not the silence they left behind. I am the song they never finished." And somehow, with those words hanging in the quiet, he knew the next song wouldn't be about what he'd lost. It would be about what he still had time to find. Lily's name was still being whispered in the school hallways, not in the way it had been weeks ago, mocking, sharp-edged with cruelty. Now it came with hesitation, a kind of gentle awe, as if people were afraid to say too much or say it wrong. Some students avoided her altogether, unsure how to approach the girl who had stood on stage and bared something real in front of everyone. Others tried to befriend her, suddenly speaking with thin sincerity and praise that rang too loud. Lily took it all in with quiet observation. She didn't trust the attention, but she didn't run from it either. She had learned how to stand still now. 2 weeks after the talent show, she was called to the school office between classes. Her stomach tightened at the sound of the announcement, old habits dying hard, but she walked there with her head high. Principal Harmon met her with a smile more genuine than Lily expected. "There's a county event coming up," she said. "A regional showcase for student artists, music writing performance. We're allowed to nominate one act from each school." Lily blinked, and, "You're nominating me if you'd be willing," the principal said. "I've already spoken to your guardian." Lily stood in silence for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." Back in the garage, she told Dean the news. He didn't say anything at first. He just handed her the good pen. "The one with real ink?" she asked, grinning. "Only for big songs," he said. They sat down together, shoulder to shoulder in front of the piano. Instead of practicing Hollow Sound, Lily pulled out a blank page. "I want to write something new," she said. Dean raised an eyebrow. "Already, I don't want to just be the girl who sang once," she said. "I want to say something else, something more." Dean nodded slowly. "Then let's find the next song." That evening, Lily began writing. Not for a stage, not even for Dean. She wrote for the girl who had sat alone on the bus, for the boy who doodled lyrics in the back of his math book but never let anyone see them, for the student who walked past the music room every day but never went inside. She wrote for those who hadn't yet found their voice. And as the song took shape, Dean realized something. Lily wasn't just healing. She was reaching. When the regional showcase arrived, it was held in the community center 2 towns over a small auditorium with folding chairs, a dusty spotlight, and an old piano that hadn't been tuned properly in years. But none of that mattered, because Lily took the stage in her denim jacket pendant around her neck and a new song in her hand. She sang, "Light Between the Cracks." You don't need to shine to matter. You don't need to scream to speak. If they call you broken, shattered, just be the light between the cracks they couldn't see. There was no crescendo, no high notes for applause, just a quiet, steady resolve that made people lean in rather than back. When she finished, the room was silent. Then a single clap. Then more. Then something else. A girl in the second row stood up and began to cry. No one moved to hush her. She wasn't crying out of sadness. She was crying because she understood. After the show, Dean and Lily stood in the hallway near the vending machines, sipping paper cups of juice. People passed by offering nods and gentle words. Lily looked more at ease than Dean had ever seen her. Rachel would have loved this, she said. Dean turned to her. This place. These kids. It's what she wanted to build, write a music program for people who didn't have one. A space to be heard. Dean nodded slowly. She had the vision. You're giving it voice. Later that week, Lily was invited to speak at a local middle school, just a few words about music and courage. Dean drove her there and waited in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching her stand in front of 30 students she'd never met. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. I thought I didn't have a voice, she told them, but I did. I just didn't know how to trust it. A hand went up, a boy with glasses. What helped you the most? Lily paused, then looked toward the back of the room where Dean stood watching. Someone who listened, she said. That night, Dean found her sitting alone in the garage, plucking softly at the keys. You've changed, he said. Lily turned. You think so? You stand different. You speak different. You even hum like you believe it. She smiled. I feel taller. Dean laughed. That's probably the boots. They sat in silence for a while. Then Lily asked, Do you think we ever stop needing people? Dean shook his head. No. I think we just get better at recognizing the ones who matter. She looked at him. Like Emily. Dean raised an eyebrow. What do you know about Emily? I know she makes you stand straighter when she's around. He chuckled. Smart kid. I know. Before Lily left that night, she walked to the wooden box. She opened it, placed another recording inside this one, labeled Light Between the Cracks. Live, and closed the lid with care. Then, after a pause, she placed a folded note on top. Dean didn't read it until she was gone. It said, Thank you for not trying to fix me. Thank you for letting me sing anyway. Lily. Dean sat back, the note in one hand, the pendant still around his neck. He didn't cry, but he did close his eyes and whisper to no one in particular. She finished it, Rach. She really did. The night of the benefit concert, the town hall auditorium smelled faintly of lemon polish and history. The wooden floor creaked beneath folding chairs. A few rows had been reserved for donors and school board members, but most of the audience came from the neighborhood. Parents, retired teachers, grocery clerks, mailmen, people who'd known each other for decades. The fundraiser had started as a small idea, a community concert to help raise funds for a student, music outreach program. But after Lily's performance at the regional showcase, interest exploded. Flyers had gone up in cafes. The local paper ran a feature on the girl who found her voice. Even the mayor promised to attend. For Lily, it was overwhelming. She stood behind the curtain looking out at the growing crowd. Her palms were damp. Her throat was tight. She clutched the silver pendant around her neck, like it might anchor her to the floor. Dean stood beside her, tuning his guitar. He didn't speak right away. He let the silence settle. Then gently, This isn't about proving anything, Lil. You've already done that. She looked at him, eyes wide. Then what is it about? He smiled, soft and steady, giving it away. She frowned. You found your voice, he said. Now you get to use it, to give someone else the courage to find theirs. The program listed Lily as the final act, a closing note, literally and figuratively. As the concert progressed, the audience listened to middle school choirs, acoustic duets, a nervous poetry reading from a boy in oversized glasses. There was polite applause, a few standing ovations, but a low-level buzz of anticipation hung in the room, unmistakable. And when Dean stepped onto the stage alone, guitar in hand, the room quieted. He cleared his throat and adjusted the microphone. "I'd like to introduce someone," he began. "She's not just a singer, or a student, or a songwriter. She's the reason this entire night exists. Because she reminded us all that even the quietest voice can echo farther than we imagine." He paused. She didn't just write a song. She rewrote a story. Then he stepped back and nodded toward the curtain. Lily walked out slowly, her boots clicking on the wooden stage, her heart pounding in her chest. But her spine was straight. Her chin was lifted. She held her guitar like an extension of her ribcage. The audience leaned forward. She began without introduction. No speech, no preamble, just music. The song was called Unwritten Light. It wasn't about pain. It wasn't even about healing. It was about after. I'm not the chapter that they folded. I'm the pages still to write. I'm the hand that reached for silence and came back holding light. The melody was simple 4 chords, a soft rhythm, but the room sat completely still. Even the coughs and rustling programs ceased. She sang like she had nothing to prove, like she was home. Dean played behind her, harmonizing gently, and for the first time since his daughter passed, he didn't feel haunted by the sound of a young girl singing beside him. He felt honored. In the final verse, Lily looked up out beyond the lights into the crowd. She wasn't performing anymore. She was inviting. So if you're standing at the silence, wondering who you are inside, just hum the song you haven't written. It will carry you to light. When the last chord faded, the pause was longer than she expected. No one clapped right away, not because they were unsure, but because they were moved. And then, as if from the back forward, the audience rose, a full standing ovation. But more than that, people crying, smiling, holding hands. One woman put her hand over her heart and mouthed, "Thank you." Backstage, Lily sat on a folding chair, guitar still in her lap. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the overwhelming stillness that followed something big, something sacred. Dean came over, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did it." She shook her head. "No, we did." He crouched beside her. Rachel would have been so proud. Lily blinked, tears forming. "You think so?" Dean nodded. "Because what you did, it was the ending she never got to write. And you didn't just finish it. You gave it wings." Later that evening, after the chairs were folded and the lights dimmed, Lily asked to go to the garage. Dean unlocked the door, and they stepped inside. The wooden box waited on the shelf. Lily opened it, placed a fresh recording inside, Unwritten Light. Live. Then she pulled something else from her jacket pocket. A new card. She pinned it to the corkboard without a word. Dean leaned forward and read it. "Healing isn't quiet. Sometimes it sings." He exhaled, then behind him a familiar voice said, "Dean." He turned. Emily stood in the doorway, her eyes soft, coat unzipped, cheeks flushed from the night air. "I just wanted to tell you," she began. Dean took a step toward her. "You don't have to," he said. She smiled. "But I want to." And she reached for his hand. That night, in the quiet hum of the garage, Lily sat at the piano alone. She played the first few notes of a new song. She didn't know what it would become, but she knew this. Her voice was no longer afraid of the silence, and the silence finally was learning to listen. Spring came late that year. The trees along Dean's Road were still bare in March, but the grass had begun its quiet return. Tiny shoots of green pierced the cold soil, reaching for light, with a stubbornness that felt almost human. In the garage, the piano had been tuned. The corkboard had filled up. and the wooden box, still sitting in its rightful place, had grown heavier, not with grief, but with memory, with lives recorded not lost. Lily arrived just before noon, her guitar slung across her back, a thermos of mint tea in one hand. She looked older now, in ways that had nothing to do with age. Her voice, her step, the way she opened the door without knocking. She belonged here, and she knew it. Dean was already inside, leafing through a stack of sheet music when she entered, still searching for the perfect chord she teased. He looked up, grinning. Still pretending it exists. Lily dropped her backpack on the bench and poured herself into the music stool. I brought something, she said, unzipping her bag. She pulled out a small hardcover booklet, the kind printed at local shops with a matte cover and spiral binding. On the front, in plain block letters, the note that changed their lives. A songbook by Lily Carson. Dean took it carefully, running his fingers over the title. It's for the students at the middle school, she said. Principal Harmon asked if I'd share the lyrics I've written. I added a foreword and a dedication. He opened to the first page. There it was, for Dean, who didn't rescue me, but reminded me I never needed to be rescued to be worth hearing. Dean didn't speak. He didn't have to. That evening they hosted a small gathering in the garage, now officially renamed by the community as the Listening Room. Emily helped string up soft lights. A few parents brought folding chairs. Students brought instruments. Someone brought pie. It wasn't a performance. It was a circle, a celebration. No stage, no programs, just people. One by one they shared songs, some shaky, some loud, some no more than a hum. Lily played, last her fingers steady on the strings, her voice like a thread pulling people closer, stitch by quiet stitch. When she finished, she turned to Dean. Your turn. He raised an eyebrow. Mine. She nodded. He hadn't played solo in front of people since Rachel, and yet tonight it didn't feel like a return. It felt like a beginning. He walked to the piano and sat. Then slowly he began to play. It wasn't one of Rachel's. It wasn't one of Lily's. It was something new. He'd written it in the quiet, in the months between heartbreak and healing. A melody born not from pain, but from presence. And it was his. After the last note faded, the garage held a stillness that had nothing to do with silence and everything to do with peace. People stood, not in applause, but in gratitude. Some hugged, some just nodded. Lily crossed the room, wrapped her arms around Dean's waist and whispered, "We did it." He looked down at her hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You were the miracle," he said. She smiled. No. The miracle was that someone waited long enough to hear it. That night, after everyone had gone, and the garage was lit only by the soft lamp in the corner, Dean opened the wooden box one last time. He placed a new cassette inside. Final recording, Dean and Lily. March 28th. Then, without ceremony, he added one more item, the small, crumpled lyric card Lily had written on her very first day. I thought I was a whisper. But maybe I'm a song. He placed it atop the others, closed the lid, and sat back. There were no tears. Only stillness and quiet joy. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, in the place once built to keep grief, something else had taken root. Music, memory, and the kind of love that doesn't fade when the song ends. We'd love to know. Where are you watching from today? Whether you're in a small town, a quiet city street, or somewhere out in the countryside, your presence here means more than you know. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing so you won't miss the next journey we take. Together, stories about love, kindness, and the quiet miracles that still happen every day. From all of us here, thank you so much for watching. Take care, stay kind, and remember, sometimes a simple act of listening can change someone's life.